Hey guys, welcome to the Keeping Up with Office Protect webinar dedicated to the users of Office Protect and a good way for us to share what we've been working on and what's coming to this great application. Um, Today I'm joined by Camille, who's the product owner for Office Protect, who you've seen before, and by somebody new, Roddy Bergeron, who's the new Cybersecurity Technical Fellow here at Sherweb. Roddy is somebody that's been working as an MSP literally for a while, has been involved in the community. Most recently was at a company called Galactic Advisor, and he'll be joining us to discuss his experience as here he is. Welcome, Rowdy. Um, he'll be joining us to discuss his experience as an MSP at working at an MSP, specifically working on cybersecurity related projects. Rest of the content today, we'll give you a product update like we usually do. We'll talk about actually, we have a great demo of one of a pretty exciting feature that we have for you. We'll talk about some of our upcoming feature, and then we'll get to Roddy. We'll keep some time for your questions at the end. Speaking of question, you can put them whenever you want in the software. There's a Q&A section. We may get to those right away, or we may keep them to the end, depending on the type of question. If your question is not answered during the presentation, what that means, generally, they will come back to you personally with the answer. This is being recorded, and it will be sent as a link to you in the next 48 hours or so. Give you a chance to catch up if you have to leave. Don't hesitate if you have questions. We're trying to think of ways to make this more interactive, like it is a user sort of get together. We're kind of stuck with the GoToWebinar meeting. Actually, there might be a impromptu poll question. Would you prefer if it was on Teams? And the sub question to that is, given the opportunity, would you participate in the conversation? Or are you okay with this more sort of presentation style meeting or webinar? Okay, that's enough for the, actually, I don't know if we have it at the end, but I'll mention we have security days in 4 cities in the US. The most recent one, or the soonest one, my English is failing, is San Diego in March. And then we have Austin in April. So if you're interested, either talk to your account representative or just check our social, like on LinkedIn, like we mentioned it a million times. Let's get right into Office Protect. So we'll start by user requested change directly. We always have a number of those. Am I not sharing my screen?
You are.
I both. Okay. All right. Thank you. So a lot of our change are directly based on your feedback. This is one of them. As you may or may not be aware, we now have custom whitelisting that gives you a lot more flexibility to have the ability to whitelist sort of as wide as necessary to reduce, which is always a target, the amount of noise that the application will produce. One of the things that was requested is when we have a user that is an anonymous SharePoint user, you can see it here in the middle of the screen, URN, SPO, Anon. SPO is SharePoint Online, Anon is anonymous. And then this lovely key is sort of how the user is dynamically created. That meant that if you were to ignore something for an anonymous user, then it would be basically unique and would never ignore anything. Like it wouldn't serve its purpose. So now you have the choice here in creating your ignore rule to put SharePoint anonymous user as the concerned user. So whenever there is any SharePoint anonymous user, it will behave the way that you want it to behave. So this was directly requested by a user of Office Protect and is now live. 2 more things that we've changed. One, we had, and this is more on us, like this is on us to not have it fixed or not have it always correct, but we didn't display the username always the same way. Sometimes we add the display name, sometimes we add sort of the full name with admin at whatever, which is the unique identifier. We now have standardized and should always have it the same way, which is the user principal name and then the display name in this fashion that you have here, with Camille being the display name and then the UPN being admin at our test tenant. And then last thing, I think, in this category, the ConnectWise or any of our integration, ConnectWise or Autotask, it will now have a clear status when the configuration has not been finalized. So if you're in it but haven't finished it, it will show up as inactive, meaning you should probably go and finish it. If anybody has any question about any of those features, or if there's anything that you see here and you're like, oh, I didn't know we could ask for things, for sure let us know like what quality of life improvement we could make, big or small. We tried, like it really influences our prioritization when you guys give us that feedback. It makes a big difference. Okay, oh, actually there's more new things. I think these are still also related to client requests, but maybe not as directly. Security event time zone, you may have noticed, we now give you the ability to pick a time zone, and that will influence the display in the application and the time zone in the emails that you receive. So for our West Coast clients or European clients, this is a big quality of life improvement where you don't have to do the math to our standard Eastern time that we were using everywhere before. We've also added a new security event, which is application permission change. We had a couple of actual real life situations which drove this change or this addition, where a application that was one way then had a change in permission. And honestly, in real life scenarios, that almost never happens. And if it happens, it's generally done by a global admin or somebody that knows what's going on. So when they see the alert, they're like, yeah, I just did this and now I get the alert, so that's fine. But if you get an alert that an application has changed permission, like as additional permission especially, that's generally, we haven't seen that to be a very natural behavior very often. And then the last one is a bit more of a, it's back-end work that has the impact for you guys. So we've made a number of improvements to performance. So for example, applying setting and monitoring configuration is now a lot faster than it used to be. Camille, I don't know, do we have any figures or difference in time for typical?
Yeah, so before the changes, it took around 1 minute to 2 minutes, and now most of the settings are applied in less than 30 seconds. And there's still one that is a bit long because of Microsoft limitations. It's the flag phishing email one. But beside that, all of the others are usually applied in less than 30 seconds.
Yeah, and I think the flag phishing one is mostly noticeable for larger organizations, right? Yeah. So for most people, we've cut it in half, basically, the time to apply settings. So that's a pretty good improvement. Pretty happy with that. So now to sort of the key component of this session, we have a completely new feature. It's a bit derived from the vulnerability assessment that we have when you add a new organization. And this is something that we've talked a lot with partners and with our sales team, and everybody's sort of very excited about this. We will give you a security assessment tools for your clients. And when I say your clients, I literally mean your clients, not Office Protect's client. So the big thing about this feature is you will have the ability to use it on any tenant that you have access to. It is not limited to the people that pay for Office Protect. And the reason that we've done that is very conscious choice. We want to give you the ability to use this information in your sales process with your client. So from conversation, from experience with partners, with MSPs, assessing the current situation of security and showing your value early is an important part of the process. And we want to give you some ammunition there to really feed that conversation and have the ability to say, like, here's all those things I'm already aware of about your organization that I want to help to protect or I want to help change. You don't have to, we'll give you the choice. You can either use this information to just look good, or you can use the report itself and show and say, well, the tool Office Protect does all those things. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter to us. You can use it, you can leverage it the way that you want. If the only thing that it does is allows you to have more clients that are more secure, we'll be fine with that. What our bet is that you'll want to use it with your clients and it will drive more opportunities for you and Office. Camille, I'm going to switch it over to Camille. She's going to give us a demo of the feature.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here with us today. So let me share my screen. Second. All right. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, perfect. All right. So let's start with the time zone selection. You can find it in the monitor section. If you go down below in the settings section, you have now the ability to select the time zone. So you don't have to convert from EST, which is the default value, to your business location time zone. So if I change it here, for example, for Paris time zone.
Random example.
Random example. And I save my settings. If I go in the report section where I have all my events, I can see that here is the Paris time zone instead of the Eastern time zone I had before. This time zone is also the one that will be displayed in the report emails, so the alert emails and the digest emails, or in your Autotask or ConnectWise tickets. In my screen, you can see two new security events. So the application permissions change. If I go into the details of one, I can see that some permissions have been added to a suspicious app on my tenant by the admin on my tenant. So these permissions have been consented by my admin, and the related permissions are displayed here.
If the hackers used applications that are called suspicious app, it'd be a lot simpler to do our job.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's very, very important to carefully monitor the applications that have been granted on some applications, because applications can get access to lots of data for sure, and hackers can do anything really bad, for example, blocking a security app from accessing some data, or escalating some permissions to get access to some sensitive data on your tenant. To monitor these permissions, you can go in the Entra ID admin portal. If you go in Applications and then Enterprise Application, I can see my suspicious app here. And if I go into more details, I have the permissions section, and I can review all of the permissions that have been granted on the application. And I can revoke the permissions if I need to. Also, directly from Office Protect, if anything looks wrong with the security event, I can again act on the user by blocking him, or remove the app directly from here. So again, if you have any questions on what I'm showing, feel free to use the question section.
I'll mention that they've been around for a little bit, and they were presented at the last user meeting, but you can see here the remediations. That's new also to Office Protect. Like, it's not new to this presentation, but if you're new to Office Protect, that's an important part that we've added recently that allows you to take action directly from Office Protect following our recommendation. Maybe you can, is the how to react filled for this event? I think so, right?
Yeah.
So we also give you guidance on like what you could look at and what to consider. And then in remediation, you have the ability to directly take action.
And if you need any more details on the event, we also have the knowledge base, which is accessible from the help section in Office Protect. And you have all of the details and what to look for in the audit logs, for example. So let's switch to the new security assessment tool. So this tool has been designed to help you assess your client's tenant security. This tool will be publicly available and free to access to your non-Office Protect clients or to your existing Office Protect clients. One thing to know is that we don't store anything. We don't keep any of your clients' data. It's very temporary. So how it works, that you will enter your client's domain on Microsoft domain in here. Once a global admin signs in the tool, we will install the service principal on the tenant to fetch all of the configurations. So Exchange, Teams, SharePoint, OneDrive, and Entra ID configurations. And once the report has been generated, then everything will be deleted from the tenant. So the service principal will be deleted from the tenant. So we don't store anything. We only ask for permissions, the permissions we need to read your data. I think the Exchange permission is kind of more permissive than the other ones because it's less granular, but it's the least permission we need to generate the report. So only a global admin administrator on the tenant can generate the report. Any other regular users cannot generate the report or access it.
Does it work with the partner delegated admin privileges?
We still need to test that use case. We should be able to do so, but we still have a doubt on the consent, so consent on permissions to install the service principal. But it still needs to be tested. And so, yeah, just a quick disclaimer on the tool. This is not a final design. This is not yet available to you. The reason why we're showing it to you today is to get your feedback, to know whether you want to use it, whether what you want to see in it in the future, and well, to make sure it answers your needs.
And we've already got one great feedback from Jason saying that it'd be great if there was a way to send this to a client and for the MSP partner to receive the result. So, because at the end of the day, if they're not client yet, they may not want to give out like their global admin or whatever. So you could send the tool, and then the tool could send the report to the MSP, and that would allow them to do their job. I don't think we have that use case covered just yet, but like I said, like this is the first version, and we'll be adding more. We already have a bunch of things planned.
Yeah. So as I said, it's not in its final version, and it will continuously evolve, just like Office Protect Portal. So we have some ideas in mind as of now, but your feedback will be very, very valuable. So let me enter my testing tenant on Microsoft. Missing an O. When I click on Generate, I'm redirected to a Microsoft sign-in window. I'm signing in with a global admin. Here is the list of permissions that we're asking for. This will allow us to install the service principal. And again, at the end of the generation, the service principal will be deleted from the tenant.
Also, the application itself says security assessment staging. That's just because it hasn't been released just yet, and that's our dev environment.
Yeah, and that's why it's unverified too.
Yeah.
So in here, you don't have to select consent on behalf of your organization, as the app will only be installed temporarily on the tenant. If I click accept, I am taken to the report generation. So at the top of the report, I can see what needs to be monitored on my tenant. On this tenant, I have SharePoint, I have Teams, Exchange, OneDrive, and Entra ID. I have 31 active users independently of whether they are licensed or not. And I have 20 sensitive admins on my tenant. So this is not global admins only, it's all sensitive roles. I can see that my tenant is not well configured. I have a 2.6 out of 10 Office Protect security score. And I will get into more details on how it's calculated. I have 4 sections in here: tenant security, global administrators, account protection, spam, phishing, and malware attacks protections, and data extraction protection. In each of the sections, I have all of the configurations we are looking at and some recommendations if we consider that the setting is not well configured. And I have a level of risk, I'd say. So in red, we have the critical ones. In yellow, the not that good ones. And in green, we have the good security postures. On each setting, if I click to expand it, I have a small explanation on what's the risk I'm exposing to if I don't configure this well. So, for example, with a third-party application, we explained that hackers may try to gain access to sensitive information and that regular users should not be able to consent to these third-party applications on your tenant. We will also add some redirection links to our knowledge base to explain how to remediate to the situation and where to find the setting in Microsoft. So the Office Protect Security Score is based out of the results I have in all 4 sections. We have weighted each of the settings. For example, it's more critical if MFA is disabled on my tenant, and a bit less critical if some third-party cloud storage are enabled on Teams. So this Office Protect Security Score takes into account the criticity of the setting and how it's configured, whether it's well configured, not configured at all, or semi-configured. So this is the first version of the security assessment. Again, the design will evolve a bit. At the bottom of the page, you have the download report button. I'm not able to show it to you today, but this will allow you to download the report in a PDF format so you can share it with your customers, or customers can share it with you. Contact us section to get Office Protect and terms and conditions, of course. In future versions, we are, well, in a very close future, I say, because we are expecting to do it in the 3 months, I'd say. We want to add some security events in this report too. So what would Office Protect have detected in the last week, for example? So we would have detected some sign-ins from unusual countries, or some permissions that would have changed on applications, administrators, or anything like this, just to show that it's very important to have a monitoring and to give an idea on what happened on the tenant in the last week. We are thinking about adding a download version which is white labeled for you guys to share it with your customers without the Office Protect branding, and the ability to email the report also. So again, let us know if you have any feedback, any suggestions. Please let us know either in the chat or send us an email at feedback@officeprotect.com. And if you'd like to get an early access to the tool, because it's not yet available, but it will be soon, please let us know at feedback@officeprotect.com also, so you can test it, either test it among your clients directly or test it on your own organization. Well, just to make sure that the data we are showing in here are convenient to you.
Can you give a sense of when they'll have access?
I'd say, well, not really, not right now, because it's more of a legal concern with the terms and conditions that are being written right now. And technically, we'll also need to make some adjustments, and also on the design. So I'd say in a month it will be ready. I think it's yeah.
Okay. We shouldn't let the lawyers get in the way of a good idea. I think you have a couple of questions for the attendees.
Yeah.
So Nick, if you want to switch us to the polls. I think the simplest one is the first one is the simplest one. You've seen the demo, you see at least the first version of it and the type of value that it could drive. Like, you could still have questions and you can still have reservation, but generally as a concept, would you use the security assessment? give you a minute. The idea obviously being either on clients that already have Office Protect and you want to sort of take an assessment of where they are, and more likely like on maybe clients you're already servicing but that have not sort of accepted Office Protect, because that has been a challenge for our partners that has been voiced, and this is a tool to address that. And then the third sort of use case is on leads and potential partners. So people that you're not yet doing business with and you want to show a little bit of what you can do. So I can't see like how many people voted or anything. So Nick, I trust you to make the call on when we're done.
66% have voted right now.
Okay. Do we have a single question? I think we had a couple, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So directly to the use cases that I was describing, for the people that have said yes, where would you use it? Would you use it on existing clients? Would you use it on a new prospect? It would have been good to put both as an option. But let's say primarily, which one would you use it on? And then the thing that I'll mention is tools like that, like this isn't a marketing thing for Sherweb. Like it's not for us to sell you Office Protect. You're already users. This is really meant to help you basically do what you have to do. So your feedback will be invaluable on something like that. Like please, you spend the time to be here, we appreciate it, but that means you have a certain interest. If you can take a minute and put some feedback or thoughts on what's there, what's missing, like what would you prefer? Something about like, well, we'll never get global admin permission from our clients, or they like the look of it is not what I would expect, or anything. That will really give us the opportunity to build a tool that will be as useful as possible for you. I can tell you that for us, the main objective is to give you something useful that gives you like usable information. And then its second purpose is for you to close sales. So we don't want it to be just screaming like the sky is falling. In the sense like, oh, you have 1,000 vulnerabilities and it's the end of the world and you're like doom and gloom. Like we want it to be practical and accurate and concise. And after that, like we want it to drive the sales. Okay, we can close the poll, Nick. I'll take back the presentation. Here we go. Are we back to my screen? Yes. Yeah. Okay. So don't hesitate. You can still put comments, feedback in the chat. Anything you would like to see in this type of tool that would either help you for security or help you for sales. We're interested in everything. If you want to have a longer conversation about it, like if you have a bit more feedback, you want to take the time, we're available for you. We'll have a conversation. Your participation is invaluable to producing the right things. A few words on upcoming feature before we go to Roddy. Security assessment, I think we're all clear. New remediation action. So you've seen the remediation just today again. We're introducing more actions that you can do. This is another place where we'd love your feedback. Like we've identified a number of them that we know to be useful based on our data analysis of what's happening in Office Protect, but nothing like first-hand feedback. So if there are things that you wish had a single click button in Office Protect to accomplish, let us know. Another big feedback from client, we've been talking about this for a little bit, but now it's really coming close, MFA dashboard and multi-tenant dashboard. So those two probably deserve their own item. The MFA dashboard is a weird way to say basically MFA health status. Like we have done extensive work with our partners to identify the most accurate way to know if you are covered for MFA, for multi-factor authentication. This is such a big part of compliance now, and Microsoft, God bless them, they're one of the greatest software company in the world, but they make it very hard to know exactly how well protected you are, if you are like compliant, if there aren't no exception. I won't get into the detail of it, but we've seen weird exceptions where it does exactly the opposite of what we would expect. So we've really put together a comprehensive evaluation of, are your clients protected? And we'll make it available as a summary. So basically, you as an MSP will be able to go in a multi-tenant page and see how each of your tenants are doing when it comes to MFA hygiene, which users are at risk and need to be addressed, and we'll give you the ability to do that as quickly as possible. So not a compliance report in the sense like, here's every user and here's everything about them, although you'll have the ability to get that, but much more focused on, here are the 4 people that are not the way that you expect them to be, and give you like that information as quickly and as accessibly as possible. Multi-tenant dashboard is the same thing, but sort of wider around the whole Office Protect. Give you a page where you can just focus on the wider elements. Ideally, we also like to use it to allow you to onboard new clients, but that's sort of a sub use case. And then new onboarding experience. I don't think this will resonate as much with you guys. The goal here is to make it easier to get into Office Protect, more applicable to new users, but at the same time, we're basically just trying to make it as smooth as possible. The goal with Office Protect remain to be the easiest tool to use, and that includes getting started with it. Okay, I've rambled on plenty. Let's bring in the guest star of the evening, Roddy. Hey,
hello.
Like that.
Like I just appeared out of nowhere.
Yes, out of bits and pixels. So, well, the goal of having you here today, Roddy, is not so much to talk about your role with Sherweb. Like, this isn't a job interview to sell you to the rest of our partners. It's much more about what you were doing prior. My understanding is you were brought on board at a fairly high level with an MSP, and maybe it would have been even a little bit hard to call them an MSP at the point where you came in. And the idea was to go a little bit from break fix to what we legitimately call now an MSP. And there was a bit of a focus on building a cybersecurity and compliance practice. Yes. So that was the idea with bringing you here today. I think like bringing guests to tell us how great Office Protect is not all that desirable. I think everybody loves to hear a good practical story. So can you tell us, can you expand on what I just said, like around what was your role and sort of how did you approach it? How did you approach like sort of leveling up and scaling the cybersecurity practice at an MSP that was basically in transformation?
Yeah, for sure. It was so like Guillaume said, like I was brought in to an MSP, right? My background was in government auditing, a little bit of IT services, and some work with some nonprofits while doing some work with the state of Louisiana. I came into the MSP space because I had a good solid financial background and ability to understand systems. So I mean, it was tough. We were barely scratching $1 million. We had 19 employees. Finances weren't right in the business, right? We were making it, but we had these months of like feast and famine, where some months we did really great when projects came in and things broke, and then when things worked, we didn't make any money. It sounds backwards to what we do as MSPs, right? To make sure that things are running as smoothly as possible and still make money at the same time. So I said, let me tackle this. So we started off with what we have, right? We did an inventory. I was like, what do we have? We have an RMM. We don't have a ticketing system. That was a big issue. We had an antivirus vendor, but it wasn't the best. We had backup systems all over the place. We probably were managing 9 different backup products at the time. And we just started with the basics, right? Like, what can we do to make things easier for our clients, and how can we make money or turn that into a recurring revenue model? Luckily, there's tons of resources out there to help try and figure that out, but we started, and the first thing I started was operations. We had no documentation, nothing was written down at all. So it was basically a humongous dumpster fire. And we sat down one day and we were like, all right, let's list all the issues that we have that are keeping us from being pretty effective at the work we do. And we started from there. We made a list and we said we could start knocking these out. And it was a tremendous task at the time. So I think our profitability at the time was like 24-25%, which is not fantastic. Normally, like best in industry is going to be 55-60% on up. So 3% of our money we were getting every month was from monthly recurring services, so not that much. We weren't selling much Office 365. So we started tackling the issues one at a time. The first thing we did was we realized that we were very disjointed in our communications internally. So I was like, what do we do first to correct that? So we implemented EOS, the Entrepreneur Operating System. So if people are familiar with that, it's a system for discussing the issues at hand, creating a pathway to get to those, to get or to fix those issues, or to get to your company goals, and to make it kind of a system in place. So we had to set up the base, the system in which we were going to tackle these issues, and then we just started saying, all right, what's our goal financially this year? What is our goal operationally this year, and what are we trying to do? So we really started from that. So first things first was documentation. Nobody had a process written down for how do you create a new user for this client? How do you set up a new computer for this client? Like none of that was written down. It was all in someone's head, and it was, I mean, we had no, we couldn't recreate the same outcomes with different people, and that was a problem. So we started doing a whole lot of documentation. We retooled pretty much our whole current tooling that we had. We implemented a ticketing system, which, I don't even know how we took care of that before, because without a ticketing system, we couldn't dispatch or figure out what was prioritized or who was working on what. We didn't have history of it. It took us a solid 3-4 years of work before we finally felt like we were in a good spot where we could build on top of that. And then came the need for cybersecurity. We were doing a lot of work with insurance, a lot of work with legal clients, and we were dealing with issues left and right. Clients were adopting Office 365 a lot. We were seeing a lot of email compromises going on. I was like, we have to do something to get around that. And after having a lot of talks with our different insurance clients, started putting together a cybersecurity package. At first, it was just very heavily tool-based. We do a lot of software, but eventually, I was like, how do we know whether or not we have a good cybersecurity practice? How do I know what I'm doing is right? So after many nights of discussions with some of my MSP buddies, we decided to adopt a security framework. Ours was CIS controls, and started building our security practice around that. So building a practice not just around software tools, but people and process and policy and procedures, and creating a whole comprehensive security package around that and pricing that out to our clients. And we did well. It was a good business. When things run smooth, things seem easy. But it was it was a lot of years of hard work of building that MSP practice out. And then when I felt like I was in a good place, I decided to venture over to the dark side and join the vendor side. So as Gail said earlier, I was with Galactic Advisors. I worked with them on their compliance as a service platform, and then came over to Sherweb, try to impart my knowledge on the MSP community.
Yes, we appreciate that. Before you go too far from your MSP experience, let me come back to it. It sounds like a lot of the initial focus was on internal process and sort of operational health. I think a lot of I'll throw myself under the bus. Like my first reflex is often to look at a product or at a technology as the solution. So let's sell this additional product, or we don't have anything that does, I don't know, vulnerability assessment or cloud security, God forbids. And then you're like, well, all right, let's start talking to vendor and then selecting a thing and everything. But you seem to have gone a little bit the other way, and started much more with process and people than the tool component of the trifecta. Was that a conscious choice? Like what led you down that path?
Yeah, it was a conscious choice. One of the things, so I go back to my upbringing, right? So I grew up on a farm, cows and chickens and rice and soybeans and all the other fun stuff that a young country boy from Louisiana dreams of. And one of the things my dad taught me was like, cool, he's like, he always taught me to get an education and know how to use a tool, right? He always told me this, like, you can buy nails, you can buy hammers, you can buy wood, right? But like, do you know what to do? Do you know how to build a house with that? No, you got to have a plan. If you don't have a plan, and all you're doing is buying tools, it'll never be cohesive. You never hit your goals because you got to have goals. You got to have a plan to meet those goals, and then the tools you have to fit into that. So I took a little piece of that from my dad, who he was a civil engineer, so he understood the idea of, hey, if we're going to build a structure, we got to know how much people it's going to hold. We got to know how much people are going to travel on this road to figure out how many lanes of traffic you have to put, or how wide the lane needs to be if there's going to be commercial traffic, and yada yada yada, right? So he had a background like that. So it is a conscious decision. You have to have a plan in place, because how do you measure whether or not your plan is successful if you don't have anything to measure it by? Right. So what's your measuring stick? What are your goals? Because if you hit your goal, then you know what you're doing is right. But if you don't have a goal, you're just going to continually spin your wheels in search of this nebulous concept of security, or this nebulous concept of a profitable business. But like, what does that look like, and how do you take the steps to get there? Because you're not gonna do one thing and all of a sudden you're 60% profitable in your business, or you're hiring people because you have a need for clients. It's an iterative process. It changes, it adapts, and it's goal oriented, right? We go back to SMART goals: specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time bound. Every goal we ever set in our MSP was based around that. It has to be realistic, and it has to be measurable. If you don't, you're chasing an unrealistic expectation.
And I find that the question is simple to answer. Like, how hard is it to add another tool if your structure is sound and solid and your processes are documented and everything? It's very easy, right, to add another tool in that case.
Yeah. And you know what you want.
Yeah, and then the opposite is also easy to answer: is how well is it going to go if you try to add a new tool or product that you want to sell on a structure that is completely disorganized and not documented? Everything will be impossible, and that's when most project fails. So I think that kind of answers itself.
It's true. It's true. That's a true statement. It's if you don't have a structure in place and a way to measure, you'll never know if you're successful or not, and you're going to keep spinning your wheels when trying to figure out what good enough looks like or what great looks like, and you never know. And you're going to base it off of what other people are doing, and you're always going to look at someone else and say they're doing better, and I'm not there yet. And like, how does that work? How do you know whenever it's good enough for you? And that's why we have structure.
So we're a little bit up against time. I think we'll have to skip a little bit of what you had planned as far as topic, but I will ask you a bit of an open-ended question, and not like there is no wrong answer. Today, like, obviously, like, you've gone through, like, you spent many years at an MSP, then spent time at a vendor, and now you're with Sherweb, where you're talking, I think, to just as many partners as before. Like, what do you look at most today in cybersecurity? Like, where is your head at, kind of like, where's your focus, and sort of where you think like MSP would benefit from looking at as well?
That's a huge topic.
Yes.
I think the thing for me is like, okay, so I look at like, what should we be doing today, and what should we be looking at that's coming down the pipeline. So what we should be looking at today is if you haven't adopted a framework yet, and some of these frameworks are extremely difficult to adopt, but start working on that. Pick one, do one well. Don't pick three and 60% implement it, because you're going to have tons of gaps. But again, I go to, how do we know what's secure? How do we know the steps we have to take? So, like, pick a security framework. You have CIS controls. You have NIST 800 171 or CSF. You have ISO 27001. Like, it's different names. It's all the same process. Pick one and start going down that pathway of adopting those controls for not only your clients, but you also have to do it for yourself. You cannot secure your clients when you yourself are not secure, as we see with things like Kaseya VSA a few years ago, and what just now a few weeks ago with Screen Connect, and those kinds of issues. Like, MSPs who have the precautions in place and have the ability to adapt to the security landscape and threats out there are normally less likely to be impacted when bad things like that happen. looking to the future, we know that we're going to see a lot more heavily regulated industries. CMMC. We're starting to see that come into play. I'm looking at like what the White House is offering for their cybersecurity initiatives, and those are going to impact MSPs and software vendors with regards about who's liable when something bad happens, right? Like usually that impact is felt at the end user level or the client level and their insurance companies, but we may end up saying that, hey, if you wrote an insecure piece of code or you implemented a piece of software on the MSP side in a wrong way, if you haven't installed it or set it up with a secure default configuration, like you might be held liable for that. So putting those good practices in place now and being familiar with good practice and processes could probably help you out in the long run to get ahead of it before it just smacks us in the face and says you have to do it right and right now.
Am I right to say that, or would you agree that like the alignment to some kind of framework is a little bit like cleaning up your operational aspect, in the sense that the next thing that you do for cybersecurity will be a lot easier if you have a strong, well-defined framework that you adhere to. Then you can put the next thing sort of in perspective of that and deal with it easier, and it's easier to evolve once you have that sort of framework in place.
Yeah, for sure. Like I always say, when I start my conversations off about frameworks and why, I always say like I'm an idiot, I'm the dumbest person in the room, and a lot of people smarter than me have sat in a room and come up with frameworks. So having myself had to go to court and defend my security practice and my security actions after an incident response, it makes me sound a lot better when I say, I don't know, a bunch of smart guys in the federal government came up with this control framework 800-171, and they spent years figuring it out. And I just adopted that because they're a lot smarter than me. And here's what we did to help mitigate risk for this client before it got bad. Because like, if you're not, then what are you doing? As one of my good friends in the security field would say, what are you doing? Just throwing tools over the wall and hoping the other it just fixes your problems? Like, no, you got to have a good systematic approach to how you handle security and risk for yourself and your clients, for sure.
Okay. As a totally biased observer, I think cloud security is something that often gets a little bit forgotten and is getting a lot more traction now. You can see it in the number of competitors that we have now for Office Protect.
Sure.
It's a market that's being addressed, but I would certainly encourage our MSPs to not ignore it in their implementation of security practices. With more and more of the critical data of companies being in the cloud, your cloud security will often become your first barrier. Not like it's not an add-on, it's like the core thing. And then last thing, and that's why I encourage you to join us for, I don't know if we have it here. Let me skip ahead just a little bit. Oh, we don't. Okay. That's why I encourage you to join us at our Cybersecurity Roadshow. Again, like San Diego in a couple weeks, Austin after that, then I think it's Denver, and the last one is
Atlanta.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah, Atlanta in June. So we're covering all of the south of the US. I hope you guys will join us. You can see Matt's smiling face right here. The reason for that is he's our main security guy in the sales and partner team. If you need anything, if you want to talk about frameworks and how they relate to our products and product set, he's there for you. He's available. Roddy will be present at Sherweb, but also at industry events. Don't hesitate when you see him, tackle him, please. Hard.
Hold off on that. But yeah, no, if you see me, talk to me.
Especially blindside tackle.
Yes.
And if you have feedback or questions about Office Protect, as always, you can reach out, feedback at Office Protect. My email is right here. Tammy's email is right here. We're very proud of Office Protect, and we're here for you if you need anything. And then that's it for today. If you have any questions or anything we haven't answered, please add them to the QA box or send us an email. Thank you very much for your time, and we'll see you in a quarter.